instances, in a business, that we believe that education plus hard work equals profit, and we've shown that, because what we've done is that we've taken an industry and started it in Lockport, where there's no previous experience with that whatsoever. Most of the people that work in our plant are from the Lockport area. The previous jobs they would have been cutting fish on the production line, or working out fishing, or maybe working at the corner store. And we took them in, and most of the jobs do require manual dexterity, but there's also a fair amount of literacy components. We did some skill development programs with workplace education, and very early on we discovered that numeracy skills, one of the things you mentioned, dealing with fractions or dealing with scientific notation, were things that we have to deal with on a daily basis in our industry, and most people that were working for us never used them since high school. In fact, one of them turned around one day and looked at us and said, oh, so that's why I took scientific notation in high school. And it was why, because we're getting into some of the higher, high technology jobs that the world is competing with us against, against us or with us, and they do require those skills. They do require you to understand, how to have good numeracy skills, how to write reports, how to read work instructions, how to prepare corrective actions, how to operate your job. And in order for us to compete with those companies, we had to have people that didn't have those skills learn those skills, and we did that through education. A lot of it on-the-job training, a lot of it through workplace education. We did 2 ONAs, organized needs assessments, one back in, I think it was 96 or 97, and then we did another one in 2006. When we first started doing our development, we had about 8 people, and by the time we did another ONA in 2006, we had 50 people, and just in January we had 69 people. So we keep growing, and because we keep bringing in new people, we have to constantly keep training people. Now, of course, we're getting hit with the recession and that, but this also, we'll address that in a later question maybe, about what to do in a recession with these sort of things. But just to sort of talk about some of the things that we identified, basic computer skills. We had probably 1/3 of our workers never turned on a computer before. Just no idea. And yet some of them should use a computer for what they were doing. So that was one of the things that we had to train people on. One of the things that I'm looking at here and seeing if A1 to E1, which one was government or which one was say business, I think the lower, the A1 skills, I think that's certainly a government initiative in my mind. When you get higher up the chain, it looks to me like it could be a government-business mixture. And then as you get to a higher level, then that should be a business, because that's more directly related to business. Getting businesses to understand that it is important, I can see from ourselves, it's been a big impact on us. We would not survive as a company if the people did not take education and training seriously and learn how to do their job. And that's companies that miss that point will fall behind. So anyway, that's all I've got right now.
Thanks, Cyril. And how about you, Rick?
Well, to stay simply to the question, I guess it's who should fund. I think clearly there's a position or a need for government funding. But I don't look just to Stu or in the provincial government. I think there's still a role for the federal government in this process. But before I get into that, one of the concerns, or one of the base issues, and I think why we've slipped back so far as we have in literacy in the province and I guess across the world, is that we've forgotten that literacy is a human right, and it's being abused everywhere. UNESCO is now in the decade for literacy are using it as one of the 3 drivers on the campaign. And I think it's something that we should remember, and it should be entrenched in our labor standards and in our legislations, and perhaps even under the Constitution. So it may help us along the way. And also, in the labor movement, and some of what I'm going to take a minute to reflect on that is the fact that we've got, as part of the national strategy through the Canadian Labour Congress, and in which the Federation of Labour is part of, we've been trying to get changes to the UI or EI structure, not only for benefits for workers during this crisis, but also to leverage funding that's there so that we can use it in literacy training and skill training across this country. There's $54 billion. I mean, Scott talked about the need of money. There is money available. And there's money there that's been paid by workers and by employers, and it's money that should be made available through the devolution of funding that's going into the provinces. Right now, the federal government doesn't provide the funding that's required even by legislation, and we should be increased up to $500 million a year for the country, and that certainly would help us hit some of the targeting. But also, I think that we have a responsibility to look at, or employers have a responsibility. It was touched on by a couple speakers already, but for employers to be investing in education. And as you can see, I keep picking up my arm extenders to see, and I was squinting to try to see when Scott made his presentation of where Quebec was, because Quebec's the only province that actually has a 1% levy for training program, and it's something that we've been advocating for this province for some time, because there is a responsibility and there is a return, and that we should be looking at that. We met with the province probably within 3 weeks of the new department being established, long before the labor market agreement with the federal government had been signed, and we talked about the need for literacy training, and because literacy training, and then we didn't know the crisis we were going to be in as we do now a year later. But it's, with the economic crisis, is that literacy training is essential for many workers to be able to continue on providing for families because of jobs that have been lost. I'll touch on a little bit that maybe after a bit, but what we have to remember is when you look at the crisis we've seen in some of the plants that have closed in the province, when you look at Trenton Car Works, when you look at the Maple Leaf and a couple other food processing, when you look at the Eastern Protein, those are jobs that were very, very important in those communities. Those are jobs that enticed, and I'll go back a little further, even in the coal mines. Young people were enticed and encouraged to leave school. People went into the industry, my industry, in shipbuilding and ship repair. When I went into that industry, we had a lot of workers in that industry that had very low literacy levels in education because they were enticed into the industry and they provided very well for their families. Now, through no fault of those workers who have been encouraged to leave school, we now find them looking for work and don't have the skill requirements. So, yes, government has a role and responsibility on that, and perhaps even governments. If we had that levy, then we'd be bank accounting some training for if companies close, and there'd be some resources there to even help those workers there.